Yes. Bring it in. Good. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the September 20th, 2021 Board of Education meeting for the Phelps-Clifton Springs Central School District. Just some notes from the top of our agenda. The Board of Education welcomes in-person attendance based on the New York NYS DOH Commissioner's determination on indoor masking pursuant to 10 NYCRR 2.61, issued on August 27, 2021. Universal masking of teachers, staff, students, and visitors to P12 schools over the age of 2 is required. We kindly request the cooperation of all board meeting attendees in following this directive from the New York State Department of Health. And those wishing to submit public comments should sign up. Please sign up on site prior to the start of the meeting. The sign-up sheet is at the front of in this table here. You're already here. And note also this meeting may be viewed. Hopefully some people are viewing through the live stream on midlakes.org and the Midlakes Schools YouTube page. And if you are live streaming, our agenda is available also on the Midlakes page. So you can find it there and follow along with what we're working through. Okay, I think we're ready for the pledge. Crystal?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. We'll do a roll call of the board. So Jake Amadon, board member.
Amber Wilkes, board member.
Ryan Davis, board member.
Lindsay Marino, board member.
Matt Murphy, board member.
Don Miller, board member.
Matt Sickles, superintendent.
Crystal Plant, district clerk.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
From Ryan, a second, please.
Second.
Second from Amber. Any discussion on the agenda that's before us? Hearing none, all in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed to the agenda? Thank you. Number 4 is consent agenda items. So A through G. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda items, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The consent agenda items are approved. All right, moving into our presentations. And let the minutes note that Tracy Altman, board member, is present. So, presentation A, retiree recognition, administrative team.
Okay. Well, it has long been Midlakes tradition to recognize those staff members who have given many years of service and had distinguished careers for us and have retired. Traditionally, we recognize them in June of each school year, the year in which they retired, whether they retired during the year or in June. Obviously, some circumstances have intervened in the last couple years that have prevented in-person recognition. We have done it via Zoom, but we wanted to take this opportunity now that we are or have been in person to invite our retirees from 2019, 2020, and 2020-21 to be here with us, to be recognized. 2 of those retirees have been able to join us, and we're grateful for that. We realize people are very busy, and it's unusual times, but it's our pleasure to recognize all of our retirees tonight, whether they're with us in the auditorium or not. We've come to know at Midlakes that the experience of our students is the product of all the people, all the adults who work so hard in so many different roles to make a difference. It truly takes every single role, every job description to lead to student success, and we've certainly seen that more than ever over the last couple of years, but it's always been true. So it's really our pleasure to recognize all of our retirees. We have our administrators who are going to assist in the recognition. We have somebody who's going to speak on behalf of each retiree. We'll start with 2019, 2020, and we'll recognize Kathleen Cammie Ketchman, and I believe that's Mrs. Benzer.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay, so Mrs. Ketchman was a kindergarten teacher when she retired in 2019. Countless kindergarten students have been blessed to have had the opportunity to be in Mrs. Ketchman's class. She welcomed her students each day with a smile and always maintained a nurturing classroom environment that not only comforted students, but encouraged them to be active participants in their learning. Mrs. Ketchman had a way of communicating with children that allowed her to reach them on a deeper level. And when it comes to 5-year-olds, that's not always an easy task. Her positive and caring approach with students and colleagues has left a lasting impression on the Midlakes family. We hope retirement is treating her well.
Mr. Moyer, I think you're next.
Amy McCann, so who's next? I know I'm not, but which teacher's next? Because there's a plethora of them. All right, so Amy McCann. Ms. McCann was a member of the 4th grade team for many years. She approached each day with a fresh outlook and positive attitude. Amy was one of the teachers that led the charge to provide flexible seating options for her students and to accommodate different learning styles. She always advocated for her students in order to provide them with the best education possible. Ms. McCann has officially moved to Florida, which was a year and a half ago, but officially moved to Florida right after retirement and is reportedly enjoying her retirement to the fullest.
And Mr. Moyer, thank you. You can see right there.
Who's next?
Mr. Stark.
Mr. Stark. All right. It's a challenge when my glasses fog, but I have to wear a mask. So Mr. Stark has filled many roles throughout his time as a Midlakes employee. He spent many years working as a primary level teacher before moving to the intermediate classrooms. Russ even spent a few years as the middle school dean. Most recently, actually, when I wrote this, I wrote these actually when these people retired.
Right.
So actually, not most recently, but we'll still go with it. Most recently, Russ taught 6th grade and had the exceptional ability to be flexible and meet his students where they were. He has also been described as one of the most patient teachers one has ever encountered. These abilities made him an incredibly successful teacher. Many Midlakes students have also known Russ as Coach Stark. Russ has coached many sports, but has spent most of his coaching years on the football field and basketball court. I would have liked to have wished him a great retirement. However, Russ came back again last year and filled a 4th grade vacancy from January to June. And I called him again this summer, and Russ is back again, filling a 3rd grade vacancy that we needed up until the first week of December. When asked, he told me, I've never taught 3rd grade, I thought I'd give it a shot. And our students are blessed to have him, and for those of you that don't know, he also is currently coaching football here. So we know Russ is enjoying his retirement, even though he's not really quite retired.
Thank you. Our next retiree to be recognized is Jane Westfall, and Mrs. Benzer and Mrs. Wood.
So Mrs. Westfall has filled many roles during her years in our elementary school. For several years, she ran the Special Friends program, which provided our youngest students with individualized support while learning and practicing social emotional skills. Her work within the program allowed many students to be successful learners and friends. Jane also applied her skills to support our kindergarten students in the Extra Step program. One of my favorite things about Jane is her contagious smile. She always has a way of bringing out the smiles on everyone else that's around her. Mrs. Westfall's optimism and positive approach with children was highly valued in our school. We hope you are enjoying all that retirement has to offer and spending lots of time with your grandchildren.
So Jane is always remembered for her dedication to the social and emotional wellness of the students she worked with. She took on a challenge for me when I needed somebody up at the secondary building a few years before she retired. So it didn't matter whether the student was elementary or secondary, she always advocated for their needs and the programming supports they needed. She was a teaching assistant who was entrusted in running social emotional programming and play therapy with some of our younger learners and did it well. On a personal note, I know she is missed by many, including me, for all of our conversations and sharing of life events. I still wish I had been able to go for that yoga walk on the farm that people still chat about as one of their favorite wellness activities. So, come on up here, Jimmy.
Yes, we invite Mrs. Westfall up to receive a token of our appreciation for her many years of service. Thank you, Jane. Our next retiree is Nancy Plate, Secretary, and Mr. Moyer will speak on her behalf.
You're all going to get sick of hearing me tonight. For many years, Nancy Plate was the first face that many students and parents encountered when they entered what was then the intermediate school main office. Nancy always greeted everyone with a smile and a welcoming hello. What really set Mrs. Plate apart was her ability to form strong, lasting relationships with our students. It was not uncommon for a group of students to congregate each morning in the office for their morning conversation with Mrs. Plate. Her presence in the office has been greatly missed, and I know that she is enjoying her retirement.
So I will recognize the next few. Yvonne Cockett retired as cook manager in the middle high school in June of 2020 after 28 years of service to the district. As cook manager for the secondary building, she prided herself on connecting with and understanding the needs of our students. She knew the majority of our students by name, as well as their food preferences and allergies. She engaged students in conversation, asking them specific questions about their families, pets, and schoolwork. Yvonne listened to the comments students shared with her, and she was especially responsive to the needs of our MEC students and always tried to make the cafeteria time as enjoyable as possible. We're incredibly appreciative for Yvonne's many years of service. Bill Johnson retired in June 2020 as a cleaner after nearly 40 years of service. Bill was a dedicated and valuable part of our Midlakes facility staff. His most recent assignment was at the middle high school, but he previously worked in the South Street and Taft Avenue schools. His knowledge of the buildings were a huge benefit to his coworkers and supervisors. Bill was also known for the connections he made with our students. He was often recognized by our student athletes as a person who had a positive impact on their experience at Midlakes. We're grateful to Bill for almost 4 decades of dedication and service to the Midlakes family. His retirement left a void within, but as I often kidded him, we were never going to let him go, and he has in fact been back since last spring. Not quite full-time, but pretty close, helping us out with our additional cleaning needs and continues to do a great job to serve the Midlakes community. So we're very appreciative of Bill. And our last retiree from 2019-2020, Roger Spofford, retired in December 2019 after 31 years at Midlakes. He was our head bus mechanic, and he always distinguished himself as a dedicated and hardworking employee. He's especially known as a talented mechanic who always kept our fleet of buses safe and well maintained. And thanks to Roger, we were able to maintain perfect DOT ratings. We're grateful to Roger for his dedication to keeping our students and staff safe. We're now going to recognize our retirees from the 2020-2021 school year, and we're going to start with Siobhan Connor, who's going to be recognized by Mr. Moyer.
Mr. Bay Rossi, did nobody retire from the high school? At the time of her retirement, Siobhan was a member of the fourth grade team and was teaching mathematics. Throughout the time working with Siobhan, I made the comment numerous times I would have wanted my own children to have had her as a teacher. Siobhan approached each day with the same vigor and desire to provide her students with a top-notch education. It was great to observe Siobhan learn along with her students as we shifted to remote and hybrid learning. Along with the support from her team, she successfully made the necessary adjustments and provided our students with the best possible education that could be provided. Earlier this summer, many of you probably don't realize it, Siobhan came back to school for a day and volunteered with us to give us an extra set of hands. Her dedication to the community and our school is unquestionable and unwavering. She has not only become a trusted colleague, but she is also a close friend now. We wish her all the happiness in retirement.
Congratulations, Siobhan. Our next retiree is Richard Jones, school psychologist, who will be recognized by Mr. Bay Rossi and Mrs. Wood.
So Richard Jones, as I affectionately call him, Dr. Jones, was truly the backbone of Midlakes Secondary School. Some called him the mayor of the secondary school. It was a very rare occurrence to walk by Richard's office and not see him counseling either a student or a staff member. Most of the staff went to Richard for his sage advice and vast knowledge of Midlakes and the surrounding community. His shoes will be extremely hard to fill. Richard gave advice to everybody. Richard was the go-to person for everybody, and Richard really was the climate and culture of this building. And he will be sorely, sorely missed for what he brought to this building.
So I think next time I'm going to go first, so I don't have to cry or anything like that through my little spiel. But Richard Jones was definitely a mentor and a friend to many. He was the district's #1 school psychologist for summer work for the last 13 years, in which I've been the department director. And it wasn't until this summer, the first summer without him, that I truly noticed all the support he gave the CSE office and the secondary building. I already miss our many remember when conversations and our comparisons of students to their parents. Because many of you may not know this, but Richard and I have been here decades. And so we have seen generation and generation of Midlakes Eagles across our many years together, and really loved those times when we would reminisce about the successes and what we learned about the challenges.
So our next two retirees, I got the pleasure to interact with much more often last year due to COVID. They're two of our school nurses, and they're tremendous losses. And the first retiree is Gail Kerr, and she'll be recognized by Frank and Tammy.
And I'm going first. Yep. Okay. So I was lucky enough to start the same year at the high school as Gail. And so I was the first special ed teacher who pushed in to classes at the high school, and she was a school nurse with lots of experience. What I always loved about her was her smile that she always had, no matter how stressful the day was. I will never forget her dedication to her job and her search for supports for families and the students. I admire her for her efforts and quick responses to health situations in classrooms or hallways, and Frank can agree with me, there have been some circumstances over her 26 years here at the district that were pretty challenging. I remember some tough situations that her leadership and dedication to the medical profession got staff members, students, and families through it in a positive way. And it wasn't just the COVID pieces last year.
Not at all. Not at all.
What do you say about the person who has taken care of an entire building for so many years? Gail has handed out Band-Aids, helped with bumps and bruises, and dealt with medical emergencies on a regular basis for many years. She did this with a smile on her face and warmth in her heart. She was always the first person to arrive at a medical emergency and always the last to leave the side of a student or an employee. She will be truly missed.
Our next retiree is Margaret Peg Carlson, who will be recognized by Ms. Wood and Mr. Moyer.
Good, I get to go first again. So, Miss Peg, one of the things before I forget, before I talk about her dedication, is I don't know how many staff members that are currently on staff remember the wonderful skits the nurses used to do for the Right to Know. That is truly the gift, and I know Peg was that creative genius behind that.
Oh, it took place right here.
So anyway, I do miss that a great deal, but yet again, she was another dedicated individual to Midlakes, her Midlakes family, and her friends. She had a no-nonsense way of handling students, staff, and families. She was the lucky first employee who had to have the talk with students hitting double digits. Her dedication to emergency situations or being the nurse to count on for the annual senior trip was also very commendable. Her behind-the-scene dedication to making sure families were taken care of and on the right list for the holidays, whether it was a list we organized at school or one that was worked on with the community agencies, she made sure families were helped.
Didn't leave me anything. Mrs. Wood didn't leave me anything. But I will say that there was not a time that I didn't ask Peg for something, some kind of support, that she wasn't there. And what Tammy said, you know, working with 5th and 6th graders in particular, there were numerous times I'd go to Peg and say, I need you to handle this one for me. Talking with our students that are getting up to that kind of tweener age. And she was always willing to do it and did it with a smile and did it with tact and grace. Probably don't know this, but Mrs. Carlson is also venturing into breeding Burmese mountain dogs. So if they are wonderful dogs, I'm trying to talk her down in price because I know that's what, but she's looking at that as something because they are wonderful and something to think about.
Thank you. Our next retiree is Ann Leverty, secretary for the middle high school PSL.
This is
Rossi?
not that I didn't want any of them there, but I wish Ann was here. A lot of what I'm going to say is a joke between Ann and I, and only she would get it. You know, Ann was the smiling face that greeted everyone when they entered the PSO. She always kept the office in tip-top order, organized grades, college applications, AP exams, grade books, report cards, honor roll lists, and kept the counselors on task. She was quick-witted, always had a comeback. Ann and I had this running joke for the last 8 years. Because I passed her office every day on my way to bus duty, and I'd look in the office and say, "Good morning, Ann," and she'd just look at me, "What do you want?" And I told her for 8 years, I said, "Before you leave, I'm going to get you to give me a hug before you leave," and she snuck out, darn it, before I could give her a hug. So I was hoping she was here tonight so I could trap her and give her that hug, but Ann is truly missed in that office. She really kept them organized and was that smiling face that everybody got to see when they needed somebody at a time of need. So thank you, Ann.
Our next retiree is Darlene Swank, who was the cook manager for the elementary school, and in addition to feeding our students, became very well known for her catering of a wide range of meetings that took place of different professional associations. And I know, for example, there's a lot of superintendents who are very upset. She'll no longer be doing the catering. Jill Swarthout, our food service manager, and Mr. Moyer will speak on her behalf.
Well, I believe Darlene was with Midlakes for 28 and a half years. She was always moving the program forward. She was very dedicated, as Matt said, to providing special meals for different venues, such as superintendent's conference days. She also established an adult line for our teaching staff, so they could have flexibility in the things that they were consuming versus what the students were required to eat. Her dedication to the students was unmeasured. She was always going above and beyond to satisfy them and to create certain things that they could process, like gluten-free items and things like that. So we're going to miss her.
So when I started as principal, I needed to get to know everybody. And the first thing I noticed about Darlene was how approachable she was. On many, many mornings, we'd be the first two in the building. I'd just go in and sit down in her office and we'd talk, kind of get things squared away that weren't working well. But she was always willing to stop what she was doing and have a conversation with me. And it's interesting what Jill said about the catering and the food. If ever we needed something, whether it was a sheet pizza for a breakfast or whatever, always willing just to make sure we had what we needed when we needed it. And she was always smiling while doing it. So she is greatly, greatly missed in the elementary kitchen.
So our last 5 retirees we're recognizing tonight are all bus drivers. And I'm going to recognize them as a group. And as you'll hear from me a little later on in the meeting, they are especially missed. Our bus drivers are critical to obviously getting our students here safely and home safely, but ensuring that they have the opportunity to enjoy in-person instruction. But our bus drivers are even more important because they are the first face and the last face that our students see every day. And they greet them and they make them feel welcome and comfortable and excited to come to school. They're often the first to let us know if there's something we should keep an eye on. They're really a treasure for us. And these 5 bus drivers serve the district for a very long time and are especially missed. Lorraine Manning retired in January of 2021 after 25 years of service to the district. Mariana McWilliams retired in June of 2021 after 27 years of service to the district. Terry Polchian retired in June of 2021 after 26 years of service. Denise Reynolds retired in February of 2021 after 25 years of service. And Patricia Teed retired in September of 2020 after 25 years of service. That's a long time to drive a bus. It's difficult work. It's important work. They're incredibly missed. We'll take them back if they want to. But please join me in recognizing Lorraine, Mariana, Terry, Denise, and Patricia. So once again, it's our pleasure to celebrate those who gave so many years of service to the district, but most importantly to our students, and thank you all for being part of recognizing them.
Wow, that was a lot of institutional knowledge, or a lot of dedication. It's a lot of people here a long time. That's awesome, and sad to see everyone go. And for those of you that are able to attend tonight, thank you for doing so. If you left, that you would not offend us, but you certainly can see, you certainly can stay and see how we continue to work on this great foundation that you laid for us. So thank you all for being able to attend tonight, and thank you everyone, whether you're here or not, for the years of service to the district. And usually at these events, we eat some cake from Darlene.
That is true.
That's, I guess, not again. All right, where are we? We are into more presentations. So letter B, the strategic planning update by the members of the Strategic Planning Council.
Okay, well, we're very excited after some substantial delays to share with you a very important update on our strategic planning process. This is a process that, due to a variety of factors, took a little bit longer than we anticipated, but I know the 10 members of the Midlakes Strategic Planning Council who are here tonight are very excited to tell you about the process. So we're going to start with Mr. Bay Rossi. Several of us, 11 including me, will be part of telling you about the history of the strategic planning process, the goals, and what the draft strategic plan contains. Mr. Bay Rossi?
Thank you. So what you see in front of you is a quote from Dr. Tony Frontier, and we thought this was apropos for the work that we did. The real important part of this quote is the key to success is not doing more work and making more changes, but doing the right work and making the right changes. And I think if you talk to every person that was involved in this process, they would tell you wholeheartedly that what we came up with is absolutely the right work and the right changes. And you'll see that in the presentation, that everybody was extremely involved and extremely enthusiastic about the work that we did and excited with the outcome. And you'll see that today, but we thought this quote really kind of encompassed the work that we did and kind of kicks us off in the right direction.
Thank you.
So as Matt said, it was delayed, but I kind of see it differently, that it was kind of fortuitous that we had the delay because it took us through the COVID. It took us through and where we're standing now through all those days of uncertainty. Not that it's over, but I find like when we did it was, like Frank said, the right time and the right work. And I will say it was actually fun. You know, those were fun days that we spent this summer. They were long days, but they were fun. You'll see that the group used the district vision and the 5 parts of the mission to drive our work. As we get into this plan, you'll see that all of these are represented in the 4 focus areas that are represented within the plan.
Thank you. So just to give you a little background on the planning process, the board knows this discussion began really back in the spring of 2019, and we went out to a request for proposal for a consultant group to lead us through the process, and that happened in the summer of 2019. And the reason that we saw an outside consultant is we knew that we needed to collect very honest, candid, and transparent information from all of our stakeholders. And that, you know, maybe if the superintendent asked the questions or a principal asked the questions, we may not get the same face-to-face candid answers that we really needed, as opposed to if we brought in strangers to our staff. So we went out to a request for a proposal, and the Warner School of Education out of the University of Rochester was selected by the board to lead this work. It's really important to note, however, that they just facilitated it, and I think the members of the team who are here tonight can speak to that. They collected the data, they compiled it so that it was easy to read and understand where we stood and how we compared to other schools. And then, you know, they set up the activities that enabled the team to create the product, to create the plan. So the plan is the work of the Midlakes team. It is not the work of the Warner School, but we're certainly grateful for the role they played. We did have a few bumps in the road. We were ready to go. All the data was collected, and the first planning council meeting was, a full-day session was scheduled for March 18th, 2020, 3 days after we switched to remote learning. So we had to adjust. We even had to do a little bit of reconstruction to the team based upon people's availability, but we ended up with 20 members representing different stakeholder groups who did a great job. They came together for 3 full, very eye-opening, grueling, exciting, fun, all those words apply, days of work to put this plan together, and I know they're very excited to share the draft plan with you.
So the first thing that the team looked at was really the program report. And what that was, the Warner School had collected a bunch of different data, most of which can be found on the school report card site and things like that. And it really took an inner look at what our data was. And the best part about it was the comparison and benchmark districts that they also had for us. So they had our data, comparison data, which was schools that are similar in our demographics and our achievement, and then benchmark schools in which are schools that are similar in our demographics, but they outperform us in achievement. And seeing those different comparison and benchmark schools really helped us to reflect on the areas we need to grow. And it was okay that we had areas to grow in. Every building, every department had areas, and you'll find some of that out in just a bit.
So the perception report was put together. It was a full gamut of staff members, board members, students, community members that were invited, and the Warner School came in for a day long, asked them a ton of questions, and some of that was also compiled with some surveys, but you can get a better feel when you're, face to face asking those questions. There's a chance that they can interpret a question differently, and that you're there, that person is there to kind of explain it. So it was good to get that perception data from everybody in the district. The interviewers were impressed with how many community members showed up. They've done this at larger school districts, and they've had very little people show up at all from the community, which most of us know how passionate and involved our community is. So it was no surprise to us that we had a huge turnout, but it definitely was eye-opening to them to have doing this in the past with bigger school districts, and we had a 10 times bigger turnout for community support for this. All the feedback from this report helped kind of drive our focal points that you'll see later on in the program. And it was just very interesting to see the perception of what staff, stakeholders, community, students thought we were doing well. And also, it was eye-opening to see what they, had thoughts on what we can do better. And it was some of those things there that they provided with us that you'll see later on of what helped us drive this program.
So John took a lot of what I was going to say about the community report, so that the U of R was absolutely amazed at the input that we had from this community. Additionally, I want to reiterate to all of you that looking through this data was definitely difficult work. I've been a teacher in the secondary school for 17 years, and I'm a parent of a 3rd and a 5th grader in our elementary school. So I have my own observations and perceptions of what's going on in our district. But to be able to see all of that together on paper, the numbers, was a lot to digest. There were a lot of positives in the report, absolutely, but it was human nature for some of us to focus on the negatives, and the teacher and me to fix them all. So it was a very rewarding experience to be a part of this initial planning for strategic planning, and I'm excited as both a member of the staff and a parent to see it through.
Thank you, Erin. I just want to add to that, because as a superintendent, I did the work alongside the group. I was a participant, but I got to watch them read this information and watch their response. And some of it was difficult. And the plan is rooted in acknowledgement that we're not where we want to be. And for people who take a lot of pride in what they do, that was difficult for them. But I applaud the entire team for digging in and using that as motivation to make some really great recommendations for how we can do better for our students.
So taking all of that information from the data sources, it was pretty neat to be a part of the process, with myself being a Midlakes grad, also a parent of a Midlakes grad and 3 current students, and then to now be the director of curriculum and instruction. I could see it from all of the different points of view. And the program report we took a look at, we were able to identify areas everybody could add to the list, and the U of R helped us to then combine all of our documented areas of concern and areas of strength and kind of meld them into 4 areas that seem to kind of bubble up to the surface. And what you'll see here is academic excellence being a high priority. And it was kind of hard to swallow that pill and say, yeah, our data is not where we want it to be. And we're going to own that, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to make plans to make this, a better education for our students moving forward. The second piece was the Midlakes community and the different pieces to that involving communication within the community, communication within the internal Midlakes staff community, communication out to our families and to families maybe whose language is different than English, to make sure that they are understanding and feeling a part of the community. A third piece was our strong and empowered staff. So having that staff perception report and the staff meetings where they met with the U of R to give their feedback really helped us to see their point of view, see their needs, and figure out ways that we can try to address those needs and retain our awesome, fabulous teachers so that they'll stay for 30, 40 years or keep coming back after they retire. And then the last piece was huge in that we were able to have 2 students participate, and they also were able to look at the data through their eyes and their lens and provide the rest of us with that unique perspective that, yes, I was a student here, but, back in the 80s and 90s, things might have changed a little since then. And student life and their perspectives is a huge piece and a huge voice that I think you'll see throughout the plan. So I'm going to turn it over to the group that focused on academic excellence, and they'll kind of dive into that a little deeper for you. But I was one that worked on that particular subgroup with academic excellence.
So under the area of academic excellence, obviously, student success is one of the primary goals. We need to look at areas where we can improve the outcome for all of our students. And first and foremost, we decided that this process has to be data-driven. Our plan is data-driven. We're going to utilize the data looking at areas of our strengths so that we can capitalize on those strengths, and then the areas of opportunity where we need to grow and develop more. So we've got a lot of information from all those different sources that they had described earlier, and we're going to use that to inform our decisions. Secondly, we're going to do this through Tier 1 supports that are available to all of our students, and then also recognizing that some of our student subgroups have special needs that need to be accounted for to, again, allow all of our students, regardless of their status, to achieve to their maximum potential.
The second thing we looked at was support systems. So an implementation of an MTSS program is something that we were aware of before the strategic planning even met. However, in strategic planning, we were able to formalize a plan. With supporting our students being at the forefront of us welcoming our students back into the building full-time this month, some of these tasks are already being implemented, such as the Eagle Time in the secondary school. Some of the tasks that will come out of this goal include a K-12 plan and provide professional development and training to the staff for these programs. We will also effectively use the data collected using the Power BI dashboard to help guide our interventions, trainings, and review the effectiveness of those interventions.
In the last section under academic excellence is programming. And really programming is all about making sure that we create a robust program for all of our students, whether they're preparing for college, a trade, or career. So that's us looking at master scheduling, course offerings, and college partnerships to make sure that we are giving our students choice, we're giving them voice and opportunity within their schedule and what they select throughout their time here at Midlakes. To kind of round out that academic excellence portion of the strategic plan.
Thank you. So the next focus or goal area of the plan was Midlakes community that came out of the data. So I'm going to invite that group to come up, of which I was a part. And this is really looking at community in a number of ways. One, how we can engage with the internal and external community, but also develop productive collaborations and access resources that will help meet our students' needs. Mr. Moyer?
Okay, so I get to lead off here. So you'll see that the first piece of this is communication and engagement. And it's essential that we have good, solid, two-way communication with all of our stakeholders. And when you look at that first highlighted area, that first bold area, the word that jumps out is confidence. And with confidence, there's trust. Trust both directions. You don't have confidence in your school if you don't trust your school. And I think setting the groundwork with good communication by any means possible, if you're talking to me, preferably face-to-face, but any way we can get our community, our parents, and our students engaged, we're going to strive to do that, to build that confidence between ourselves and our community.
We also talked about community partnerships, and as our group came together, we quickly realized how much our school and our community have to offer one another and how much more could be possible. So we'd like to utilize and optimize all of those resources and collaborate together so that we can benefit one another as much as possible, so that Eagle Pride can be seen, felt, and heard throughout the community and not just on campus.
Thank you. And we recognize that if we're truly going to be a Midlakes community, that involves everybody. And making sure that every single member of the Midlakes community, every one of our students feels included, feels a sense of equity, feels a sense of belonging, that there is no sense of alienation. Equity and inclusion is an initiative that is being embraced at the state level by the New York State Education Department and the Board of Regents. In fact, many of us will be attending virtual events in the coming weeks with those groups on that topic. But it's really important work that we're going to be engaging with internally and with partners to make sure that every Midlakes student, when they walk in the door, regardless of their characteristics, regardless of their background, regardless of any factor beyond their control, feels connected and feels like they belong when they walk in through the doors and onto our campus.
So as our school community continues to become more culturally diverse, it's definitely more important than ever that we give all students, parents, and staff an opportunity to highlight their accomplishments and also celebrate their traditions. Some of the ways in order to do this, it is necessary that we collaborate with our local businesses and organizations to identify the different ways that we can share everyone's story. So as a member of the multi-MTSS team and the strategic planning team, we believe it is necessary that we create a Midlakes motto and somehow market it throughout the community and as well throughout our schools. There's definitely a lot of really good schools out there already doing some wonderful work in this area. So if we could partner with them and network with them to kind of get some ideas on how we can share our Midlakes pride and also be able to share the history of Midlakes. And lastly, I just kind of want to point out that we definitely want to give everyone an opportunity to share their personal stories. I think so far this year we've done a really good job at giving kids the opportunity to do this through our SEL time, our Eagle time, but we can definitely do more. And we need to be able to share the greatness of Midlakes.
Thank you. Our next goal area is creating a strong and empowered staff.
So we want to make sure that staff, no matter what role they have at the district, that they realize that they all have a part of a student's success. And some of the retirement stories that you heard tonight, definitely. You know, those bus drivers are just as important as teachers in the classroom because they are those first people that get to say hello to kids when they get on that bus to come to school. So one of the things under professional development that we're definitely working on this year is that social emotional learning, because that is what's needed for our students right now. But going forward under professional development, really a needs assessment for all staff so that administration does know what supports they need to do a better job so that kids can be more successful. And with that, the internal communications, working with principals, the district admin, and really all staff to increase those conversations across campus, that horizontal and vertical communication, upping that public relations. What's the best way for that information to get out to the community, staff, students, and the like?
And some of the things that you'll see throughout this plan is it's woven together, kind of meshes together. It should, education's never done in silos. All of these things should work together. So there's going to be some common themes throughout the different things that we do. Employee wellness is one thing that we've been working on. We have a wellness committee, and we partner with Excelis. Our goals are to expand on that. And then some of the things that we do with students, we also want to do with staff, like character dares, or, the staff, they also need some emotional support at times. If the staff is having a bad day, we've got to figure out to make sure that they're cared for as well, so that they can take care of the kids that come through the door. So it's just as much of a goal for us to make sure that we provide those supports for our staff as just like we do for our students. And we'll work through our wellness committees to make sure that that's done.
Thank you. And our last goal area, recognizing that our students are at the center of everything we do, is student life.
Good evening.
John Neal, you're looking very sharp tonight.
Thank you. Student leadership. I'm glad to be part of this strategic planning, by the way. Is to provide students to take active roles in our education. It would help us build self-confidence, trustworthiness, and authenticity, where students can feel welcome to share their ideas and for them to be heard and valued. That is student leadership.
With the co and extracurricular activities, we're going to work with students, parents, and advisors and coaches to find and create ways to evaluate current programs, assess the needs of our current programs, and what's needed to move them forward. We'll be working to improve the current opportunities and constantly working to assess, what we might need to add, maybe what we might need to take away, depending on what we find from our data that's driving these decision-making processes. But we're constantly going to work with the community and the students to make sure that we're striving to make sure that we do the best for our students in our community.
Our next is student wellness. The first category that I'm going to go over is student conduct. Students want to work in an environment where they feel safe and pleasant without being distracted. That just for most of our students, Next category is drug and alcohol prevention and awareness. As the epidemic of drugs grows faster and faster, many of our students are participating of the use of such substances on and off campus. Raising awareness is a key part of this plan because it will help students to properly understand each addictive drugs and their effects on the human body. And the next one too. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. While this does not pertain to teachers, but mostly students, because teachers do a good job of diversity, the plan is to create a structure where all students, no matter race, belief, gender, nor sexuality, can feel included and accepted. And it goes with what the Midlakes community said. Teachers do a good job about it, but this is just out of student perspective. So.
And then finally, the educational opportunities, again, this is kind of one of those things that meshes through everything. So we're going to keep investigating and create ways to partnership with our internal and external groups to create community service opportunities, provide more ways to expose our students to the trades, other careers, and college choices out there. So again, we'll keep surveying, having kids, having teachers, community members work with us to provide those enriching opportunities for our students to be exposed to a multiple facet of opportunities.
Thank you for all of you for expanding upon those goal areas. For the board's sake, then where do we go from here? So we have the plan, you have the draft plan for feedback prior to finalization and making it public. But what are we going to do with this? So, the plan is worth nothing if we don't act upon it. So the next step is the one last piece with the Warner School is they're going to come in and work with members of the administrative team who are identified as year one facilitators for some of the initiatives in the goal areas identified by the team. So that year one management plan, first I should begin by saying that all of us wish that we could snap our fingers and have this entire plan accomplished in the blink of an eye, because it all represents all the things that we want for our students and for our school community and the community at large. And we wish that we could do it fast, but we want to do it well. And that means being patient, being thorough, being data-informed, data-driven, and taking the time to really make sure that the work sticks. So you will see in the plan that, tasks are identified for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, even year 5. So we're going to start with year 1 management plans, where the Warner School is going to work with us, those of us who are identified as year 1 facilitators, to figure out how do you write it so that it's attainable, and how do you write it so that the steps are there to make sure that those actions take place. That will then equip us to work on our own after those year 1 steps are accomplished to write our year 2 action plans, year 3, and so on, and to adapt as we go. So that's the work that lays ahead, and then there's going to be a lot of reporting out to me by different facilitators. I will say that when somebody's identified as a facilitator of an initiative, it does not mean they are solely responsible for accomplishing all that work. This is just as creating this plan was collaborative, doing the work is going to be collaborative. It has to. It has to engage the entire community. There's a lot here. So the facilitators will delegate, they'll empower, they'll work and lead, they'll work with and lead many other stakeholders to actually do the work, and then report to me, who's responsible to the board, to make sure that the plan is carried out. So there will be periodic reports on the schedule that's outlined in the plan, and then there will be reports to the board as well. We want to acknowledge that the plan is a living document and that the planning process is a fluid one. This represents what this group of people saw in the moment in the data that was presented. Our data, hopefully, was going to change in a positive direction, but it's going to change one way or the other. Data changes, circumstances change, and we have to be able to adapt and respond to that. You also probably noticed a lot of overlap as we split out into those 4 goal areas. Academic achievement has some of the same initiatives as Midlakes community came up with, and some of what Midlakes community came up with had some of the same initiatives that student life had, because a school isn't compartmentalized. Everything is connected. So as we go, we may see initiatives, merge and consolidate, and that could affect the timelines as we go. So this isn't a rigid document, it's a living one, and we'll work together and adapt as we go. And then hopefully be able to identify, because we expect that academic achievement, academic excellence, Midlakes community, a strong supported staff, and student life are going to continue to be important for as long as Midlakes is here. So this can very easily grow into a year 6, a year 7, a year 8, and so on. But there will be updates to the board as we make progress on the annual management plans, but as some of these initiatives are accomplished and then feed into new initiatives. And then finally, I want to recognize not just this outstanding group who are brave enough to come out or foolish enough to accept my invitation, But thank you, all of you, for being here tonight to present the work of the entire team. But listed here are all 20 members of the Midlakes Strategic Planning Council, representing all different stakeholder groups. And I know they appreciate the efforts of the group tonight who are here to present. And before we open up the questions, I just want to say thank you. It was very difficult work. It was humbling work, but this group took tremendous pride, and I think they created a really great product for our students. So thank you. And we open it to questions.
So, Board, we do have a spot on our agenda under discussions for any discussions amongst ourselves about the strategic planning and the process and that sort of thing. But if you have any questions for the presenters, now would be a good time to ask. To fill this, thank you very much for the presentation. That was, I mean, it was thorough and certainly reflects an incredible amount of work. I mean, this plan is, I've seen strategic plans before. This looks well laid out, you know, so I'm happy that we contracted with Warner, because I know that's reflected there, their expertise in putting together strategic plans, but it also reflects all the hard work that went into it by the Planning Council and especially the community members. I mean, the number of community members that were involved is awesome. I mean, that's certainly reflects, you know, the love of the school, but also, you know, and also the interest in making us do better and do better by our students. So that's what's great to see.
I'd like to give a shout out to Navu Dor, who was unable to attend. However, she did this on her birthday.
Yes.
Her 16th birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Good.
Matt, the community survey report, what was the difference in the questions from March of 2020?
So the questions were pretty similar, but recognizing that time had passed and some pretty significant events had passed, so it gave the opportunity for community members to give updated feedback through whatever lens they experienced in the year and a half that had transpired. So the questions were, in terms of evaluating the different areas of performance, were pretty similar.
A lot of the same people answering?
It was all anonymous.
Anonymous, okay.
So we did have, again, the Warner School was incredibly impressed by the volume of participation in both surveys, but the survey responses did go up. We hit 300 on the second survey, so there were, you know, that's a really good sample size. So it was, you know, a good amount of data to be able to trust that it was reflective of the broader community. I would say probably where that data had its greatest impact, that second survey, was on the community, the Midlakes community engagement piece.
All right. I think we're good. Well, thank you again for that presentation. That was well laid out and reflects, you know, a lot of hard work that's happened, but also previews a lot of hard work to come. But certainly sets a roadmap for you know, a lot of our efforts over the next 5 years, which is good to know. It's good to have a plan. I mean, it's awesome. I think we're ready to move on to the next presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you all. You're certainly welcome to stay. Some of you have to stay. But some of you are certainly free to go. But thank you for being here to be part of the presentation. So our next presentation is an update on our school meal program. So I invite Jill Swarthout and Mr. Bayrossi and Mr. Moyer.
It's all yours. We're here to support.
Okay. So today, we had hot lunch for the first time since we've reopened school. We were ecstatic about that. We got to see our kids, we got to communicate with them, we got to just be with them again, my team. We were very, very pleased to be able to do that. Do you want to go to the next slide? Okay. So initially, we were thinking of October 4th as when we could roll this back out again, but due to tightening up our procedures and our team, we were able to push it up to today, which we were very grateful to do. We have a regular hot lunch item along with your accoutrements, your vegetable and things. And then we also have a peanut butter and jelly, a deli sandwich, or a yogurt option for those that need a meat, non-meat alternative. We are not currently offering point-of-sale items such as ice cream or chips or cookies due to the fact that we want to keep things as sanitized as possible. Okay. The K through 6 students are served in the cafeteria. We're also waiting for determination between the 6-foot rule and the 3-foot rule, and we didn't have a lot of space to be able to accommodate the 3-foot rule unless it became evident that we were able to do that. The 7th and 8th students come in through the line first, and then the 9th through 12 students are called up by seat. Again, meals are free, so our numbers have increased dramatically, and they're free for all students, and it's funded by the USDA until June 30th of this year. Hopefully, legislation will push forward that we will be continuing to offer free meals after this year and going forward. That's a copy of our menu up there. As you can see, we started with deli sandwiches, and then today we were able to offer famous popcorn chicken, which the kids just love, with smiley fries. And tomorrow they're pretty excited too, toasted cheese and tomato soup. So this is what we're going to continue to do.
Thank you to Jill and to both building principals and their teams for making this happen. The last couple weeks they've been doing something they've never done before. Working under new guidelines that weren't allowed last year. So they took the opportunity of the 2 weeks to work through the procedures, and we're comfortable recommending this transition.
Do you want us to say
Sure.
anything about today?
Sure.
So I'd like to say, working with, Frank, you can jump in anytime too. Working with Jill's been great. She's been easy to talk to, very accommodating to our ideas and listening to us, which is, the basis for a good relationship. Today, the kids were super excited. And it went very smoothly. You got to imagine. I mean, it's one thing when you're talking about kids that have gone through the line a number of times. Our first graders, nor our kindergartners, had been through a lunch line. So you start today with them never being through a lunch line, and it was very smooth. Are there a few hiccups? Absolutely. But there were no major spills. Everybody got back to their seat with their popcorn chicken. Everybody enjoyed their meal, and it was wonderful. And we had kids say, "Can I go back and get more?" They were very, very excited. "Can I pack my lunch and buy my lunch tomorrow?" Absolutely. They're very, very excited, and it speaks volumes to the staff, to the kitchen staff, the monitors, everybody involved from top to bottom. Our secretaries all took a turn today, going into the cafeteria and helping just to make sure. that we got through it smoothly. So it was a great experience, and I want to say it was the right decision to do what we did. It gave us a few days to kind of get our feet wet before we got into this, and it was a good transition today, and it was the right decision.
I would echo what Mr. Maury has to say, and it's, obviously the two buildings are different, it's different personalities with students, different ages students. I have a couple of two little stories. When our seniors that go to FLTCC in the morning come back, and it's in between two lunches. So there's probably about 20 or 30 of them that come in, and they sit in the cafeteria until the bell rings and they can get lunch. And a majority of them are boys. And they came in and sat down, and 10 of them right in the front row just looked up and they said, "Mr. Barossi, is today popcorn chicken?" I said, "Yes, it is." I've never seen so many high school students excited for popcorn chicken. And they were. As I was walking around lunch today, I walked by one of our football players, and he was sitting at one of our booths, and he had 2 trays on his table. I said, 2 lunches, and he had a smile from ear to ear. He said, "Yeah, popcorn chicken day, Mr. Barossi." So the 2 weeks were necessary for us to get the procedures down to make sure that we could function and keep the kids safe while we were serving them. But today was a great day. The kids were excited, happy to have hot meals, wanting to know what's coming next. Now the staff want to know, okay, what's coming next? When can we eat? So I know Jill has, like Chris said, Jill has worked with us throughout this entire process and has been wonderful to work with. And is always looking to do something else, to see what else she can do to help us and make sure that the kids and staff are getting fed. So it's been a great process, and we were very happy today to be able to feed our students hot lunch.
Thank you. And I want to give a shout out to Jill too, because what she didn't mention is that she was even a little shorthanded today for the first day of the transition. So it really speaks to the collaboration within her department, but also the collaboration with the building level staff as well. So thank you all for working together to make this happen so quickly.
Great, thank you. The board does appreciate the efforts to move to warm lunches. I know we, as you noted, that we started with bag lunches so that we could work out your processes to ensure that things went smooth and safe. But as you may have noticed, if you were at our last meeting, there was intense interest from the public, and the board has received communications on bringing back warm lunches. So I'm glad that you were able to smoothly do so ahead of our previous thought schedule. So thank you. Any other questions or follow-up on that from the board? Great. All right, moving off from presentations to reports for County School Boards Association. So let me find my notes here. I attended the Board of Directors meeting, it was a long time ago now, back in August with the sign up or the setup of the Fort County for the year. Standard normal stuff, except that we did have our previous director, that was her last meeting, and at that August meeting, we were presented with a person that they had interviewed and wanted to hire, which was Dr. Stephen Miskell, who was offered the position and approved by the Board of Directors on September 7th, which I did not attend that one. So that's the biggest news from Fort County. I did get a communication today from Fort County asking for some feedback for their legislative efforts. Fort County does lobbying on our behalf with the state and federal governments, and they have a short survey for us to fill out with some looking at our thoughts on what issues should be lobbied on this year, and we'll discuss that at our next meeting in October. So that's what I have from Fort County. Questions or thoughts? Right, Matt, Superintendent's report.
Okay, well, you've heard quite a bit from them already on different topics, and most recently on the school meals, but I just want to give Mr. Moyer and Mr. Bayrossi an opportunity, give a quick update on how the first couple weeks of school went.
So I can say, and I'm sure Mr. Moyer will echo this, it has been wonderful to have a full load of students back in the building. The last year was something that we all struggled through. I think both staff, students, community members, we all struggled through it. And to have all of our students back in the building has been absolutely wonderful. The second day of school, traditionally, Mr. Giancurcio and I have our class meetings. We call all the students down here and kind of go over expectations for them for the year. And one of the first questions I asked this group this year is, how many of you are excited to be back in the building? And when you're asking 12 to 17-year-olds that question, you can imagine the responses that you'll get. But most of them said, yes, we're excited. And then I said, how many of you were tired? Every single kid raised their hand. I would say that the one thing that we're battling now is having the kids back in the building and getting them back up to a point where their stamina is down because they're not used to being in the building. And they're tired. They're exhausted. But to see them with each other in the hallway, to see them communicating with each other and socializing with each other, I think that's something that they have missed. There's kids that generally, you would say, don't care for school, that are excited to be back and express that they're excited to be back. The staff is ecstatic that we have everybody back in the building, and it has just been wonderful to have everybody here, and I'm sure Mr. Moyer will echo that.
Wow. Thanks. So, everything Frank said, I echo. Think back to about 2 weeks before school started. Matt Murphy was at a meal for our new teachers, and he said, "Are you ready?" And I looked at him and I said, "We're going to be ready if I want the 8th to be tomorrow," because we wanted to get the kids back in the building. The bottom line is we're going to be ready because we needed to be ready. And we were ready. And it was exciting, and it's been working very well. I mean, how can't it? Surrounded by the people you want to be with. Teachers and administrators, we're rare. We like what we do. We come to work every day because we really enjoy it. So, I mean, how can't we be excited to get back to a day when we got all of our kids in our building? We're doing what we want to do and what we are meant to do. And the kids have been great. I think the difference with the younger kids is the teachers need more stamina because I think you see the flip side because they are full of energy. And by the end of the day, we're all kind of on the other end of it when you're working with the 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds. But the procedures are working well. We've been, Mrs. Benzer and Mr. Zirkis spent some time last week. We restructured our arrival dismissal one more time. We started to scale it back. We started all hands on deck. And now we're starting to kind of release the reins a little bit because the kids know where they're going now. That safety issue isn't as high. Our littles are still being escorted, our kindergartners, our pre-Kers, but our older students are starting to go to their classrooms on their own without us guiding them. Breakfast is running much more smoothly now. Those little things that take a few days are starting to really click, and anybody coming in to the building, in the afternoon for pickup, sees how fast we're getting cars in and out now. So things are coming together. It's been fun. I don't know. That's about all I can say.
I do want to just give a shout out to the administration and the staff in both buildings for the responsiveness and flexibility in working out procedures. The elementary school last year did have the opportunity to work out procedures for parent drop-off and pickup, drop-off and pickup. I had it right the first time. And really had that down to a science with a lot of different people helping out. Since the secondary school did not have that opportunity to end the year in full in-person instruction, I think nobody was anticipating the incredible increase in the number of secondary, middle, high school parents who dropped off their kids on day one, which led to a backup all the way to the corner at Route 96. And I have to give, a shout out to everybody, to Deputy Holland, our SRO, to Mike Reefstack, to the entire facilities committee. Literally, they stood in the parking lot after the last car left and were immediately on day one problem solving what needed to happen that afternoon for pickup. And they had it down. There were still a couple hiccups, but by the next morning it was all smoothed out. They rerouted some traffic, and we never had that issue with traffic backed up onto 488, let alone out to 96 again. So that's just an example of the teamwork and the responsiveness and how everybody is just, every circumstance is different, than it's ever been before, and they continue to rise to the occasion. And I just want to thank and recognize them all for their efforts. So thank you. Next part of my report. So I want to give an update, and it's evolving. And if it's confusing, I apologize. It's confusing because it's confusing regarding required and optional testing of staff and students. Memo came out on September 2nd from New York State Department of Health. There are many parts to this. So the first part is the required testing of all staff members, weekly testing of staff members, unless they opt out by showing proof of vaccination. So it's really important to phrase it that way. It is not that vaccination is required or showing proof of vaccination is required. The testing is required. The proof of vaccination is the opt-out method. So we've been working through that and giving staff members an opportunity, if they so choose, to opt out by showing proof of vaccination. There are some staff members who want to be tested, so they don't show the proof. We're going to be working with Ontario County. They got a nearly $3 million grant to put towards staffing to support the schools in Ontario County and all the supplies for as long as that money lasts. We hope it'll last a long time. But we don't have that staffing or those supplies yet, but we're working through it. So, we're collecting that information from staff so we know exactly how many staff members have to be tested on a weekly basis. That test is going to be a self-administered saliva test, and we'll have results within 24 to 48 hours. We will be, at some point, we will have an LPN assigned to us by Ontario County, but we will have to allocate some of our own staff to assist with the logistics of that. That's still evolving. We've been talking about this for a while now, and we learned new information this morning in our weekly meeting. So we're probably at least a week away, if not more, from the actual testing, because we're trying to get certain very critical questions answered so that all of us, and when I say we, I'm not just talking about Midlakes, I'm talking about all the superintendents of the Ontario County schools are having these conversations and trying to clear up misunderstandings so we know exactly how to do this well. We also have to identify space where this can happen so that it doesn't interfere with instruction. So that's the staff piece. Second piece of the requirement is we have to offer, with parental consent, purely optional, the opportunity for weekly screening testing of students. Now this, for students K-8, it is going to be a self-administered, with coaching by the LPN, self-administered light swab of the inside of the cheek. So it's also saliva-based, okay? But it's a swab of the inside of the cheek. For that's K-8. Grades 9 through 12, it's the same collection method as it is for adults, which is a spit test, collecting the saliva that way. And again, we'll have results, and they're sent out to a lab that Ontario County has a contract with, and we'll have results in 24 to 48 hours. That is going to be an opt-in for parents, not an opt-out. So we're not saying everybody, and then unless you tell us otherwise, the parents have to tell us that they want their students tested. We have no idea how many students to expect. So if we have 1,200 students whose parents want them tested, even with the additional staffing from Ontario County, that could be very challenging to do in a week. So it may be a situation where we have to do some sampling or split into groups in every other week. And again, we're working with Ontario County on that. And we want to wait until we know more details to share information. Originally, we were going to launch a registration form tomorrow for parents to begin opting in, but we just learned this morning that the lab that Ontario County is contracting with has their own registration that has to happen. So if we did our sign-in form, they'd still have to do the companies. So we're going to probably just go with the company registration because that information will be shared with us and not make parents do it twice, which would be confusing. But we're waiting for confirmation of that. So we're just taking a breath, getting all the information before we communicate so that we're not confusing anybody. And then the last piece is optional diagnostic testing for students and staff who are either symptomatic or exposed regardless of their vaccination status. And that's going to be a case-by-case consent. We're not going to have parents, give blanket consent for the year and say, oh yeah, if my kid's ever, exposed, or if my kid ever has a runny nose, go ahead and test him. It's going to be case-by-case. We're going to hopefully work out a DocuSign method so that the nurse, who would have to call home anyway, would say, okay, I'm going to email you this or text you this, DocuSign consent. And then if they're symptomatic or exposed, they'd have to be tested anyway. This just allows them to be tested at school with supplies provided by the county. The whole goal is to keep them in school or get them back to school quicker. Now, if they are symptomatic, they still may be quarantined as per the Department of Health's flow charts, but we're trying to, the whole goal of the testing is to try to minimize quarantines. So that is going to be a shallow nasal swab. This is not that deep brain tickler that many people talk about. This is actually the one where I actually, Mr. Clausen created a video last year, and I was the test subject where, and again, this will be self-administered by the student or staff member with coaching, where it's just very casual or very shallow in the nostril, a couple times around the inside of one nostril, a couple times around the inside of the other, and then that goes into a machine that we'll have right here on campus provided by the county, and we'll have results of that within 20 minutes. So they're all nucleic acid based, so PCR style tests, and they're all, the student or staff member will be in control of the application of the test. So again, we're learning more every day, and as soon as we're getting closer to actual implementation and know more of the many questions that we have and that you may have, then we'll be sharing that out with parents and with staff. Just pause there because there's a lot about that testing. You may have some questions.
So just for clarification, all staff are required to be tested weekly unless they show the opt-out of their vaccine.
Correct.
And that's New York State schools.
That's dictated by the New York State Department of Health. And there are some staff members who've said, I want to be tested weekly, so I'm not going to show proof of my vaccination because I want to be tested. That's their choice. But we're in the process of collecting that information. But it's the testing that's required, not the vaccination.
So the
As of September 20th, 2021.
As you say, the testing, this self-administered, is this something recommended by the county? I guess I'm trying to picture these, our youngest kids doing a.
I was a little
self-administered-
surprised about that as well, and I think there's probably going to be quite a bit of coaching involved, and, you know, the LPN and our nurses will be trained as well, so, you know, we'll see how it goes, and we want to make sure that the test is valid, so we're going to have to see how that evolves. I'm sure our nursing staff and the county nursing staff will be making some recommendations and adjustments as they go. I have the same question about how, you know, getting a 5-year-old to swab the inside of each nostril, so.
I mean, is there concern about how long that's going to take during the
Yeah,
day?
I mean, again, we have no idea how many parents will opt for that.
I mean, I'm just referring to staff. I mean, can that be spread out over time, or you don't know the details of
Well,
that?
you know, we're trying to make the most efficient use of the staffing made available by the county, our nursing staff. You know, again, last year, they didn't start out with all of our students here every day. They are swamped.
Yeah.
They are fielding calls from parents on symptoms. They're fielding calls from Ontario County on contact tracing. They're doing all the normal immunization records. They're, you know, dealing with, you know, all the normal things that kids come down to the health office for. So they're very busy. They're going to have to be involved, but we want to be mindful of that. The information that was given to us today is that they believe, the county believes, that they could administer 50 to 75 tests per hour in the way that it's laid out. So if that's the case, you know, even if we had half of our staff, 150, that should be manageable in a school day, in one day a week, as long as we're, you know, scheduling it out and working, you know, with people's availability. But these are the many details that are discussed every time we meet as a group of superintendents with the Ontario County Administration and Public Health.
Could these tests be used to take kids out of quarantine? Right?
We're-
Say
we're-
you had a positive case in the classroom. It's just one positive. It's my understanding that we don't have to close that.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's not student-to-student transmission within the classroom because everybody has a mask on.
Right.
So say you had more than one positive case in the classroom, which would probably lead to the quarantining.
Right.
But say you brought them back, you know, I know in some places they test like after day 5, right? And then if they're negative, the quarantine can be cut down and they can go back to school. Can we use it for that at all?
Yeah, and again, all those decisions are made by the county, but since the county is coordinating this testing, that's the intention and our hope. Now, what decisions they make along the way, you know, sometimes their decision-making and their thresholds will evolve. Like last year, when we went from 6 feet to 3 feet and brought kids back K-6 100%, at first, they were quarantining pretty aggressively, and then when the data showed that there wasn't transmission, then they started to relax and lay off and be a little bit less aggressive on the quarantines. Having worked with them now for quite some time, I would expect that that's probably how they'll operate, is they'll probably still be cautious at first, but that's the goal of the whole thing. The whole purpose of the testing is to shorten the amount of time that kids are out of school. So certainly, at the very least, they'd be out the 24 to 48 hours while we wait for the results back, if it's for diagnostic. If it's the screening, that's, you know, certainly will end up contributing to those decisions, but it's more of a proactive step and a peace of mind step to get a handle on, how many asymptomatic cases are out there. Any other questions on testing? I wish I could be more definitive, but every time we meet, we walk away with a few more questions, and they don't have the supplies in stock yet anyway. So my guess is we're at least a week out. And I know in talking with some superintendents, if they call us on Thursday afternoon and say, we could test on Tuesday, we might say, well, that's great. But now that we know, how many kids, or now that we know the information, we got to get the information out to families and know how many kids we're talking about, and we need another week to plan. So, we could be a week to 2 weeks out from actually testing. I expect to be testing staff before we test students. Transportation challenges, again, I referenced earlier in recognizing our 5 retired bus drivers. I will tell you right now, this is my single biggest concern about maintaining in-person instruction right now. And you've probably seen on the news all over the place, not just on the local news, but state and nationally, there is a bus driver crisis. There was a shortage before COVID. I don't know if COVID's contributed to it, but there's a flat-out crisis now. We've lost 5. We've hired 2. Credit to Kitty and Mike Hoos, our interim director of operations. I'm signing agreements whenever possible with other school districts who happen to transport students to the same out-of-district placements as we do, and we'll sign a cross contract, and they'll transport our student for us, and then that frees up a bus driver to stay in district and man our runs. But we're using our bus mechanics, we're using our bus dispatcher as needed. We've only had 1 sub for like the last 2-3 years now, and that person's getting ready to be really retired. So, that's going to hurt when that happens. You may have seen today that Governor Hochul, well, first of all, last week before, the state of Massachusetts decided to mobilize, I think, 250 National Guardsmen to serve as bus drivers. New York has said, they're not quite there, but Governor Hochul did identify some steps to try to increase collaboration across industries and to try to get anybody with their CDL to drive a bus and to try to incentivize them to make it easier to, in some regards, easier to become a bus driver, waive the 14-day period between the permit and the driving test. But they have not relaxed the process of getting certified, or getting licensed. So it could take 2 months. For somebody who doesn't have a CDL, it could take 2 months to get one. So I really hope that the Department of Motor Vehicle will take a close look at that and see if they can differentiate the standards, because the standards have been going up to get a CDL, and they're equating bus drivers to cross-country truck drivers and who need to be able to fix their truck on the side of the road. Our bus drivers don't need to be able to do that, and the federal standards are scheduled to get even more stringent in January, which could make matters worse. So I'm concerned, and I'm having the Transportation Department work out plans of, okay, what would we do to stay open if we were down 1 bus driver? What would we do to stay open if we were down 2 bus drivers? And have those layers of plans up until the point where there's just not enough. And is that after 2? Is it after 3? Is it after 1? We're assessing that because they're still plugging holes right now on out-of-district runs and working with other districts to free up as many of our drivers as possible. But we might get into a situation where we have to identify certain bus runs to say, okay, today's Plan A day. And in Plan A, bus number whatever and bus number whatever are going to get picked up half an hour later than normal because they got to go cover for another bus first, get those kids in, and then maybe go perhaps to the kids that are closer to the district and then get them and bring them in. It's that type of, that's just an example. We haven't settled on anything, but we have to get creative. And there might be some inconvenience to some families to get kids here a little bit later if that's what it takes, rather than having to go straight out remote right off the get-go. But with the level of shortage that we have, I would be shocked if there isn't a day or a period of time. And you know, if somebody is exposed or quarantined, that only adds to the challenge, where we might have to switch to fully remote for a short period of time because we simply don't have the drivers. There's already districts, at least one district that I know of in this area that's had to do that. Again, we're working right now to identify strategies to prevent it, and then once we know that those strategies can work, not without inconvenience, but they can work, then we'll work on communicating them out. But that will be a challenge this year. Questions on transportation?
How about our bus drivers that retired? That handful of bus drivers, have we talked to them?
Yeah, they were done.
They're done.
I mean, we continue, but they have not expressed interest. Other questions? I want to speak very briefly. There's a motion, the first motion on the agenda under new business is a motion for the district to join a mass action lawsuit against Juul Labs, Inc. There's not a lot I can say about this because it does involve pending litigation, but it is related to student vaping. It is a contingency-based lawsuit where the lawyers involved only get paid if the districts involved get a settlement, and it's to recoup past and future costs associated with managing student vaping, providing anti-vaping education, purchasing vape detecting or vape detectors in bathrooms and things like that. So it's low risk for the district. It's a mass action that's already underway, and we have the opportunity to join in. So that's what that motion is, if the board chooses to approve and engage in it. And that is my report.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt on any of that? All right, moving into public comment. So the Board of Education values the input of the Midlakes community and welcomes public comment on any topic related to board work, with the exception of matters pertaining to individual personnel and/or students. All public comments must include appropriate language and observe proper decorum. Anyone making public comment must identify themselves by name and address. The public comment period will be limited to a total of 30 minutes and one comment per person. Individual comments will be limited to 2 minutes. The board does not respond to items presented or questions raised through public comment. The board may discuss topics of public comment at a later time and/or contact the individual who submitted the comment. So Crystal brought up the public comment sign-in form, and it is blank. So is there any members from the public that do wish to comment that did not sign in? All right, not seeing anybody get up. We'll move into board discussion. So the first discussion is on the strategic plan. So we heard a presentation earlier today, or earlier tonight, on the plan, and as just I was just reflecting, right? This process has been a multi-year process already. I mean, I do remember us having a board goal 3 or 4 years ago of trying to learn, where we were trying to educate ourselves on what strategic planning is, and just since the district has never engaged in a strategic plan before, just to get our head around the whole idea and really decide whether we wanted to do it or not. And so then we did that, and then I think our next goal was to how do we run it, whether to run it ourselves or to hire an outside group to help us through it, and then that. And then the last couple of years, a year or two of supporting the process, supporting the kickoff meeting. And thanks to Tracy for being our representative to all those meetings and discussions around the strategic plan. So I'm excited to have it. It's the first when I looked at. We got a copy of it at our board retreat on Saturday, and so it was, that was the first I had seen of the work, which I'm happy. I lost my train of thought. I know I had another point. But I guess any other thoughts or comments on the process or where we are, or any discussion from the board?
I'll just reiterate that it was a pleasure to be a part of the planning those 3 days. They were, I think, it was just amazing to be a part of the process and to see a mix of people all working together to really make the district better for all of our students.
So cool. Anything else?
Yeah, I think just echo what you said, Jake. I'm thrilled to finally get to this night. We started it a decade and a half ago to get here. And, it's one of the, Matt, you said earlier that everybody that was involved in it wish you could snap your fingers and it would be everybody would have met every standard. But I think in this, it's one of those things where the process is as important as the outcome. You get to really look at yourself and challenge yourself. And I can't thank everybody that was involved with it enough. I think it's awesome that we had 300 community members step up that wanted their voices heard. And I'm thrilled that we're now getting to really dig into what we found out about ourselves and to start moving forward.
Cool.
And we did celebrate Navu's birthday with her and let her go a little early so she could take her permit test. So.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, the student involvement was definitely an important part as well. It was great to hear directly from students who were involved. So.
Cool. Well, cool. The board, will stay involved certainly with the process through many ways, and so, we'll have lots of opportunities to talk about it in all its pieces as the next 5 years go through. Any other thoughts or comments on the strategic plan? Cool. All right, school meals discussion, just follow up to that. We heard the presentation a little while ago about the switch back to hot meals today. And one part of that I struck me was the idea that now, we started through the grants, been able to provide free meals to all our students, breakfast and lunch. When the pandemic started a couple Marches ago, but it didn't occur to me, that continuing means, a greater volume of people going through the lunch line than they've probably had in the past. And so that's a lot, that's just more work that our staff is doing, which of course I appreciate. and I do appreciate, that, as I said earlier, that we've been able to open safely and move to hot meals as quickly as we can. Any other follow-up discussion or thoughts on that?
Yeah, two things. I wanted to ask, and Frank, you can, the last person through line. So when you call them up, 9 through 12, how are they for time-wise to eat?
So, first of all, it's always fun to watch the lunchroom and kids go through the lunch line. I will say that by the time we're done, each student gets 30 minutes for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
They probably have a good 20 to 25 minutes to eat their lunch. And it takes most students 5 minutes to eat their lunch. When you're in the lunchroom, you can tell when the kids are done because the volume starts to increase exponentially as they start to finish their lunch. So I have not seen a student that is struggling to get their lunches eaten. Probably the only kids that struggle are the afternoon BOCES kids. But when they come into lunch, we let them go through the line first because they have to leave early to get on the bus to go to BOCES. So they're the first ones through the line on the B lunch. So I have not seen anybody struggle to eat in time.
Chris, same story for you?
Say that again?
Does Chris have the same story?
Probably, yes.
Time?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I kind of figured. Okay.
Frank, I had a quick question for you. There was some mention of some shuffling of schedules, maybe too many kids in a certain lunch period.
We shifted some of our kids from A lunch to B lunch and B lunch to C lunch so that it's pretty even across the board right now.
So that's all ironed out at this point?
Yep, it's all ironed out. We did that so that Jill wasn't overloaded trying to get the kids served. Yep.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Matt, I got a quick question for you too on it. Moving towards advocacy for free lunches moving forward, will we be able to pull a number on what we're serving now versus what we were serving before they were free so we can get, when we sit down and start talking to people about, funding this, the question's going to be, what's the difference? Are you giving that many more out? And it would be good to have real numbers on that.
Right, so I wouldn't take our snapshot right now because I let the hot meals take hold. But I will make note of that and ask Jill to gather that information over, so that we have a sizable amount of data to share. But quite honestly, kids are required to attend school. They're required to be here for 6 to 7 hours a day. We should be feeding them.
I couldn't agree more.
And I know that, and I'm just echoing, and I hope that, certainly the consumption piece will help, make that case, but our rising level of poverty and the rising level of rural poverty across, and urban poverty across this state is reason enough that this should happen. And I'm hoping that if anything good can come out of the last couple years and a lesson can be taken from it, that the governmental agencies will make the decision to continue this because it's what we should be doing.
Yeah, this should be the easiest no-brainer on the face of the planet. Yeah, but it's not going to be, so.
Right.
Every bit of
Yeah,
information.
so we will gather the information, and I'll have, we'll look at, the first half of the 1920 school year before we close down, and then, and then do a comparison after we have a sizable amount of data. What's really important for families, and we're going to be pushing this, and thank you, Crystal, is in case they don't, our greatest fear in having the lunches free right now is that families who qualify will have no motivation to fill out the free and reduced lunch paperwork because everybody's getting free lunch. And that could really hurt on the back end if they don't continue free meals for all and then our rate goes down, and then people aren't qualified. So we really want to encourage people to still fill out the paperwork, because that could set our rate for next year if they don't continue this program. So we got to play both sides against the middle a little bit on this, and advocate for it to continue, to plan for it to not.
Right. The only other question about lunch is, I skipped dinner tonight. Is there any leftovers of my lunch?
It sounds like the odds of that are slim.
Slim? Okay.
Sorry, Ryan.
I guess it's, bologna sandwich.
I do want to point out, just, free lunches, school meals, it's all a reimbursable program. It is one of the most heavily regulated programs that there is. And we, Jill, she works long days, she left, but she could speak to the fact that the record keeping and the proof that has to be provided of the meals that were served to get the reimbursement is a very stringent process. So it's very closely regulated.
Matt, say that again. So we do not get money up front?
No, it's a reimbursable.
We spend the money and then get it reimbursed.
Right.
I see.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Any other questions or discuss? So any other discussion, board, on things that we want to talk about before we get into our business?
One more thing just on the school lunches. I know there have been, in the past, there have been grants for districts to be able to provide free lunch to every student. Is that something we can look into in the future?
Yeah, it tends to be based upon the free and reduced lunch rate.
Right.
And that's something that, prior to her departure for SUNY Geneseo, Tracy Marshall and I spoke about quite a bit. And that was a goal. Sometimes, districts hit that threshold where it becomes free, but then it becomes hard to maintain it, again, for the same reason I identified, that people then stop filling out the paperwork, and then you can't sustain it. But we'll continue, we'll advocate, but we'll look for other opportunities as
It all
well.
comes down to families filling out those
Yes.
the paperwork, filling out the application. And it has to the application has to be done yearly, correct?
Yes, it has to be done every year, and, we're at about 43 to 45%, I think, right now. Is that, Michelle, is that, I'm accurate? And traditionally, we know, and this goes for pretty much every school, that is an underreported number, because as kids get older, they tend not to want to fill out the paperwork. So even as our free and reduced rate has gone up, we know that it doesn't accurately reflect the experience of our families. So being able to have this current program where it's free for everybody without the paperwork is a great service to our community, and we want to be able to continue it.
Thanks. Thanks. Any other discussion items or anything we want to talk about? Anything more on lunches? Cool. All right, moving into new business. First one is the letter A, is the resolution on the litigation for Jewel Labs. Just remind the board that, that we have to talk about legislation in executive session, not legislation, lawsuits and litigation. So if the board wants a long discussion on this, we will do that in executive session and then come back to public session afterwards to approve or disapprove, to pass or not pass this thing. But if the board is comfortable passing it now, then we can do so. So bring letter A to the floor. Any discussion on letter A? Any concerns that would cause us to talk about it more? Not hearing any. Everybody in favor of letter A, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, A passes. Let's do B, C, D, E, and F as a block. Any discussion on B through F? All the money stuff. Not hearing discussion on B through F. Not hearing any discussion on B through F. All in favor of B through F, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? G and H, athletics and fundraisers. Any discussion on G and H?
Yes, I was just wondering, this is the first time we've offered hockey, correct? Do you have a large interest, or has that not been signed up yet? Oh. Oh. Nice.
So John said three students that moved into the district. So cool. Any other discussions on G and H? All in favor of G and H, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And letter I, surplus vans. Any discussion on letter I? Not hearing any. All in favor of letter I, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Letter I carries. Moving into personnel. Letter A is retirements. Bus mechanic. So, any discussion on A? All in favor of accepting A, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So A is accepted. Letter B, appointments. We have 10 appointments here. Any discussion on the appointments? All in favor of approving the appointments, 1 through 10 under B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Letter C is resignations. 2 resignations. Any discussion on letter C? All in favor of accepting letter C, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Letter C pass, and we'll look at D, E, F, G, and H, the rest of them as a block. Any discussion on D, E, F, G, and H? Hearing no discussion on D through H, all in favor of D through H, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? D through H pass. This brings us to our second public comment period. Is there anybody from the public that does wish to address the board at this point? Not seeing anyone, we'll move out of public comment, and we'll move to adjournment and executive session. So, motion to adjourn the regular board meeting for the purpose of entering into executive session for the purpose of discussing matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person and contract negotiations. All in favor of adjourning and moving into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excuse me. Motion passes. We are now in executive session. Thank you all for attending and for your
Thank you,
hard
everybody.
work this year.
Thank you.
We will reconvene in the library.